That's correct, everyone. Roll call, please, Jen.
Mike Dolson,
I'm here.
Tom McDonald, Jennifer Finley, Jim Molitor, Carol Langford, Danielle Matt, here, Bing Matt, James Still Jr.,
Yes.
Martin Charlo, Glenn Tooties, Lenise Trahan. Here.
Vernon, would you give us a prayer this morning? Give us that on. We do have minutes. Let's see. My computer not working too. Minutes from January 21st. Motion by Len to approve the January 21st minutes with corrections. Second by Jimmy. All in favor? We have 6-4 and Danielle abstains. We have an agenda for today. Have a good number of walk-ins. Is there any other things, council? Jennifer?
I have 5 walk-ins, and I'm going to move tribal education JOM handbook to after the Dixon school update.
Len?
Mr. Chairman, I will be leaving early. I'm going to be going to Helena to provide testimony this morning.
We're anticipating that. I would entertain a motion to accept the agenda. Motion by Len, second by Danielle. All in favor? We're unanimous. There'll be quite a few people going to Helena to testify. The folks, when they come in, will go to their issue immediately too. So we'll start with walk-ins. There. Arlene Fion?
We have her in executive. I got, hold on a minute.
Be looking at executive with her.
So kind of-
Neil?
Yeah. So Mike.
Okay. We'll have Mike Pierre. Squat. You can sit down and we'd appreciate it if you do use the mic in front of you.
Thank you. Well, I'm here this morning, to see if we can't get, an extension on our buffalo hunt. We've been down twice so far and nothing's been out. And we've got word that there are some coming out or making their way out. And, I'd just like to get the chance to go down and harvest our own buffalo. Like I said, we've been down twice so far. Nothing's been out and we've been 9 days total. So if we could, I'd like to see it, if we could get pushed to the end of the month, if not that long, at least 2 weeks.
Carol?
Yeah, I have somebody else brought up the same request to me to bring it up today, so, what does it require? Is it administrative change or is it allowed or what?
I don't know that. I'll have to find that out. Ring, are you aware?
The only thing I know about it, Chairman, is that, cow season ends on the 1st of February, so I'm not sure what's gonna happen. We have, I believe, Whisper coming in today, so maybe we could talk to her after a little
She's
bit and
in
see what
Helena.
she's got to say about it.
Is she?
Carol?
Yeah, I'd have no problem doing that as long as it's, so, the regulations, we can do it without confusing people. So I think that's what it takes, is talk to Whisper and she'll advise us on what we need to do to get it done.
Okay.
And if it's not allowed, then I guess we'll let you know, but I don't
Okay.
know why it wouldn't be.
Yeah, I
I
think in the past, I've heard it was extended for at least 2 weeks in the past years.
I believe we all support that. So we'll definitely look at the protocol and get back to you, Mike. And
Awesome,
then look at getting at least 2 weeks, maybe a month.
awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you
Have a good day.
and good luck. Emil Gardapi?
Flex.
Quacks. Welcome.
Oh, okay, so I will get straight to it because I know you guys got stuff to do. I am here to talk on behalf of my mother. She has given me power of attorney over everything, including financial. I got the documents here if you guys need copies or anything. Notarized, signed, and everything should be good there. So, I've been trying to get in contact with Skaha about trying to get her moved up on the list because she's been in the ICU and I almost lost her actually in this past few weeks. And, she's been sick for over 6 months with a bad infection that just grew and grew inside her leg and got halfway up her body. So I mean, she's still in the hospital and community in Missoula and she'll be there for like another 3 weeks probably. But they were shocked that she was so mobile and walking when we went in there that, they was like, how are you walking? And she was like, I have to do what I got to do to maintain my sobriety and get to my meetings. And, they put her in a medically induced coma for about 4 days. Yeah, about 4 days, a little over maybe. And, well, now that she's up and she's really determined to try and move, but before that, the apartment that we're in the Silver Village, is just not handicap accessible at all. She can't get her walker through any of the doors inside the house. The toilet's too short. She can't get her legs over the bathtub. So I'm her home health care. I'm working on becoming her home health care worker. And I already do it anyway. You know what I mean? I help her, you know, get into the shower, and I do everything for her. Like, and I will till she's gone. You know what I mean? So like, I'm here today to, ask you guys to, like, I don't know, help us try and push, because we're number 13 on the list through SCAHA for a handicap unit. And now that she's not as mobile as she was when she went in, we really could use that unit, you know, and a walk-in shower. Because I mean, it's gonna be 10 times harder now when she comes home than it is when she went in. And I've already got her one of the like electric chairs. I've ordered her a hospital bed, and we got that. I'm taking all the steps that need to be taken to get her everything to accommodate her and her disabilities and everything that we're going through right now. And I just yeah, I just wanted to come up and speak on her behalf and see if we can do anything or jump through any kind of hoops to get into a place quicker where she can get in and out of more adequate, and get in through the doorways without having to go sideways with her walker and drag it in there, you know. And then, well, now that she's coming home, we're gonna be having her in a wheelchair a little bit here and there to get her where she needs to go sometimes, because there's times where she can't walk. And like I said, she's coming back less mobile than she was when she went to the hospital. But that's all I got for you guys. Thank you guys for your time and listening.
Carol, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. It'll require that you go to the housing board, and they do take into consideration when you're in these situations.
Okay.
But the council doesn't involve ourselves into housing because there's a board.
Okay.
There's a board that council puts in place, and they're very good to work with when they find out your situation.
Yeah.
They're usually amenable. I mean, if you're that far up the list, I mean, if you're way down, it's a little bit harder, but I think the key is that she is not in any kind of capacity to live in a regular house. So
Yeah.
they may have an elder unit somewhere that they can put her into. So I think you really need to, Mr. Chairman, have him go back there, and Jody can do some kind of emergency things. Jennifer's trying to reach her, but
Okay.
there's somebody up there that should be able to assist you.
Okay. And where do I go for the housing? board?
Housing,
Housing. Okay.
yes.
I didn't know that. I
And
didn't know there was a board.
she'll call up there and let them know that you're on your way and that you spoke with us.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
I will head that way. Thank you guys.
And
Yeah,
yeah, thank you and
if
good
you
luck
happen
to
to
your
wait
mom.
till tomorrow, I can go up there with you too, so.
Okay.
It's up to you. It's up to you.
I'll go up there and see what they say, and I'll get a hold of you. And
Okay,
if they don't take me in today, well then. go next month.
sure. I'd be happy to. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Carol.
Yeah, take care. Tell your mom hello. Praying for her.
Looks like everything else is in an executive. I don't see Whisper yet.
You start it, Tony? Rich, can you start it?
Just want to make sure you guys get, through council so you can get on your way to Helena. Let's do it then. And then we'll get back to walk-ins right after this. Good morning.
Morning, council.
But
Good morning, members of the Tribal Council. For those that don't know me, I'm Rich Jansen, Department Head of the Natural Resources Department, and I oversee the Division of Fish, Wildlife, Recreation, and Conservation, including the wildlife program. I heard some talk about people wanting to talk about the bison hunt, extending the bison hunt. I did talk to my Chief of Fish and Game and many of the wardens that work for you and work for the membership, and as far as I know, no bison have come out of the park so far this year. They did after they left this weekend, so it's pretty late in the season. And as far as I know, we have not had any successful hunters. If that's not the case, I'd love to hear it. Extending the hunt is always at the behest of the tribal council.
Is there a protocol that we need to take? We've been requested to do a month, if possible, at least 2 weeks as the request.
Well, usually it's a request for a special hunt outside of
Yeah.
regulations.
Yeah.
So if we want to put a date on February 1st to February 15th, or what dates we could figure out as the end dates. And then there'd be a look at the administrative funding of it, emergency funding, because we do send staff members down there, game wardens. And we they budget that amount per year to go down there. So if we extend it, we'll have to make sure we have a budget or ask for for extended budgets to go down there. Not opposed to it at all. We just got to work. We just got to look at a few things to make sure it's doable and we have it ready to go.
Motion by Carol to extend the bison hunt by 2 weeks. Is it February 1st to the 15th? That's what you said, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that's what was done in the past. I would have to check with Whisper and concur,
Okay.
but
It is.
Motion by Carol, second by Bing. All in favor? I don't see James, so I'm hoping he's with us. Oh, there we go. All in favor was unanimous. Thank you.
And then if the council again wants to revisit that before the 15th, they can do so. Calving starting, I mean, that's a good question. I'm not too sure. Yeah. But we do know well, we're not other tribes, but other tribes are down there hunting, so. I don't like to ever compare us to other tribes, so.
Now the issue's the chronic wasting disease hunt. And they wanted to present that material this morning before they headed to Helena.
Yeah, I'm waiting. I'm gonna start that here soon, Mr. Chair. I have Carrie Kingery's on her way down. She is our wildlife program manager, who's our expert on chronic wasting disease. And Whisper Camel Means, our division manager of fish, wildlife, recreation, and conservation, was another expert on our chronic wasting disease. And you're gonna have a lot of people here that have their own opinions on chronic wasting disease, but you have charged us, your natural resources department, to come up with a plan to deal with chronic wasting disease when it impacts us here on the Flathead Indian Reservation and our resources, which is our mission, is to manage the resources, which includes the mule deer in this area. And I ask that individuals that are going to be listening to our plan to please listen to the plan before offering your opinions on what we should or shouldn't be doing. And we'd love, to be able to answer those questions that our membership may have about what we're proposing. But what we're proposing is really the second step in chronic wasting disease. The first step was done back in 2022 and 2023. It's the Chronic Wasting Disease Surveillance and Emergency Action Plan, which I sent to the council just a couple days ago or even yesterday. It's a 47-page document that we went through an extensive public outreach campaign during that time. Followed the tribal administrative procedures ordinance, talked to both culture committees, brought it to the membership, did everything we possibly could. And a lot of those meetings were not well attended at the time. But we knew that chronic wasting disease was in the Libby area, and then it hit the Kalispell landfill. Positive hit in the Hog Heaven area from a mule deer buck. And so after getting that back, we started the second process in the Chronic Wasting Disease Surveillance and Emergency Action Plan, which is to look at the effective area, a focused area, and come up with a plan on how to deal with that in that area. So I'm going to start by going through this. And what we're looking at is proposing a CSKT tribal member chronic wasting disease hunt proposal. And that's what you're seeing in front of you today. And the current zone, the current chronic wasting management zone is what you see today. And if I can go down, kind of show everybody that's in the area, the map of the zone that we're looking at. And for some reason, you can kind of see the Irvine area as well as the Hog Heaven area. For some reason, there we go. Is what we're looking at. So Whisper, what I did is I just started introducing what we're looking at, and right here is where I'm at.
Okay.
So I'm gonna have Whisper take over now.
Mr. Chairman, Council, I'm sorry, we didn't realize what time this was starting, so we're here now.
I think that's good.
What we're asking for today is we'll give a quick update of where we're at with the CWD management zone and situation. And then we're here to ask for a regulation change to approve a special hunt for 2 weeks outside of the regular hunt season in the Irvine and Hog Heaven areas. So where we're at is that the CWD positive mule was harvested in the east central portion of the Hog Heaven management unit in late November. We presented all this to you last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago. We received the sample and we were notified in January. We then designated the emergency response area per the chronic wasting disease surveillance and emergency response plan that was approved back in 2023, I think, that we vetted through the TAPO process. So a 10-mile immediate response buffer area was designated, and that includes the 2 areas that were shown earlier. Also includes roadkill and the highway. So Carrie had written a grant through APHIS to be able to address chronic wasting disease. She's had staff on this year. That's why we've had the check stations and likely how we caught this situation. Yes, please.
How do we determine 10-mile radius?
It's all based in the emergency response plan, and that would be a Carrie question, but she's en route, so
Okay.
that's just all in the document that we put together, that we have a 10-mile radius. A deer move quite frequently and far, so you need to be able to capture all the area that they might be touching other animals in and infecting other deer, and other elk and whitetails.
Carrie's walking in.
So the intent of the hunt is to be able to help us achieve the sample size to determine prevalence and distribution of the outbreak, as indicated previously, reducing the herd population size to slow the rate of spread within that herd and reduce the spread to surrounding areas. And also raising awareness among tribal member hunters and tribal members about protecting our food sovereignty, and by allowing hunters to participate in management goals. One that we always have had in our pocket is administrative hunts. We will start to bring our staff together to be able to go out and harvest animals within that area to be able to get our numbers for the prevalence. Wildlife teams flew the area 2 weeks ago. I'll let Carrie talk about that too, and determined how many deer, elk, whitetails, mule deer, and elk were in the area, so we could come up with our sample size for the prevalence, so we could see how many are testing positive. If we're lucky and we really cross our fingers, maybe it's just the one, but it could have spread to more. So we'll be doing our admin hunt with our internal staff. We'll mainly be focused on mule deer because that is the species that this was detected in. North of the reservation, they're only finding it in white-tailed deer. We're working with other programs like forestry and with our own refrigerated trailers and one of the local meat processors, Donald Pierce, to be able to try to bring samples to those places to hold until the chronic wasting disease test comes back negative and the meat can be released. We did get a hold of the state. Len, I think you brought that up last time, to make sure that they had the capacity to be able to take all the samples, and they indicated that they did. They're actually ramping that back up because it's outside of their hunting season. They're making themselves available to us to process the samples that we send in. The item that we're bringing to you today is approval of the tribal member hunt, and I'm going to wait and see if Carrie has anything to add. I've only gone through those first ones before we get into the hunt.
No, I think that covers most of it. I did prepare a presentation to kind of show, kind of give some visual representation of what prevalence is and kind of why it's really important to herd health and human health. But I can show that at the end if there's interest, but we can kind of go on with the hunt now and then show that if needed, just for time.
Thanks. Oh, yep.
The one thing I want to add is if we do an administrative hunt and we do also extend the bison season, that administrative hunt of this may be affected by extending the bison season, because talking with the game wardens, they were waiting for the administrative hunt part of the mule deer until they get fully staffed back from members back from the bison hunt. Welcome to the meeting.
Not a lot of bison out in Yellowstone, so that makes sense. We also have other admin staff that can participate in this that are approved through their jobs to hunt. So as we spoke about before, it's just not the game wardens that can shoot for the admin hunt. So per the chronic wasting disease surveillance and emergency response plan, our proposal that we're bringing for you today is an extension, a special 2-week hunt that would occur from February 1st, it goes in here, to February 15th after the female closure, which is this Friday. And we would have check stations set up in that area as we have for the past few months to be able to make sure that we get all samples of deer that come through. In that area specifically, we would like to incentivize the hunters, as we did with the APHIS funds, to submit chronic wasting disease samples to us. It's been popular. We've actually had more response by tribal members bringing samples in because of the incentivization, we believe. And then we'll have a scoring system to try to get people to harvest the ones and sects that we need them to do. The special hunt regulations that we would need approval for is to extend that special hunt from February 1st to February 15th. That submissions of a sample for CWD testing would be mandatory for all cervids harvested in CWD management areas during this special hunt. That means everybody bringing a sample in would need to, everybody harvesting to be able to be included in our prevalence numbers would need to be able to, would need to submit a sample. That would be mandatory. They said there were no mule deer or deer checked in last weekend. It was all elk. Lastly, we would ask that for a regulation that all heads be left at the big game check station. Antlers can be removed by the hunter and taken with them, but we want to keep the head with the samples because that is the really infectious part, and we want to be able to dispose of that properly. And just noting that CWD, the special hunt, does not grant hunter access to any private land. Hunters must get landowner permission to hunt on private land, and Kaylee still has our depredation hunter landowner list and can make all those places available. And that the special hunt would terminate once predetermined numbers for sample size and distribution had been met. Though, and this is what we would also ask you, is that the mandatory sampling remain in effect in the Hog Heaven and Irvine areas through this next regulation season, so that everybody should be bringing their heads in to get tested in that area. From any species, not just mule deer, whitetail, moose, and elk.
Questions from council? Daniel?
I'm trying to understand how killing 100 animals is gonna stop the spread of it. It's already here. It just, I can understand us making mandatory samples or getting the samples. I'm just having a hard time understanding why we're gonna take 100 animals. It seems unnecessary.
Carrie will bring up the presentation to show why that's necessary. We only have one sample. It is not spread out all over the reservation. It is in one sample up at the northern end of the reservation. Flathead County and Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks is having a challenge keeping it up at the north end. I think I mentioned, I've talked about it a lot, so I'm not sure who I'll said it to. However, the landfill in Flathead County landfill chose to reduce the size of their perimeter fence, and all of the CWD positive carcasses from eastern Montana that are driven here and then testing positive are taken to that landfill. They lowered their fence. I'm not sure why there was not communication between FWP and the landfill. And so deer just came right into the landfill and walked all over the carcasses. They had 60 positives at that time. We are trying, I'll let Carrie go.
Thanks, Whisper, and thanks, Daniel, for that question. So I'll kind of run through this really quick. We touched a little bit on some of this, but I'll just kind of go through it just to kind of emphasize that all that we've done thus far has been, just directly following our chronic wasting disease surveillance and emergency response plan that was adopted in 2023. Kind of our first phase was that surveillance. We didn't know whether we had it or not on the reservation, and that's why the lymph node samples were crucial. We took samples from all over the reservation, but we knew kind of in these shaded portions that this was our higher risk area, where just based on all of those units or wildlife management units there are within 40 miles of a known detection of CWD on the landscape. And so we knew if it was going to come in, it was going to come in close to these areas. So we really focused our surveillance efforts here. So we, began to incentivize, as Whisper said, hunters to submit those lymph node samples by raffling off prizes every month. One of the other efforts we did this year was we boosted our seasonal staff to run 3 check stations, 3 to 4 days a week. And then we also, the last 3 years, have been providing hunter sampling kits and hosting sampling like CWD workshops so that we could teach hunters how to pull samples so that they could submit samples as easily as possible. Just a kind of a rundown of what our numbers have been like as submitted samples from tribal members. In 2021, we had 5 different hunters submit 9 samples of harvested animals. In 2022, you can see that number went up a little bit, not a lot. Last year was our first year implementing a big game check station, so you can see there was that bit of a jump there because we were catching more at those stations, but there was definitely room for improvement. And then this year, just between October and December 31st, with those 3 full-time check stations going all weekend, we had 75 hunters and 81 samples submitted through those check stations, and hunters bringing the samples directly to our office. So those are all tribal 75 minus 7. Hunters were different individual tribal members bringing us those 81 samples. And then we've continued to just internally and administratively submit samples for CWD. You can see we really just internally ramped those up the last couple of years. And that's us driving around the roads, picking up roadkill, any animal that has to be put down due to some sort of illness or injury, and then any predator-killed animals that were fresh enough, we collected samples from those. And so this year, again, just between October and December, internally within DFWRC, we've collected 100 samples between roadkill and symptomatic animals. Again, we knew we got that detection in January. We knew, it was good to see it come in an area where we had expected it to come. That shows that it also shows that it could have potentially naturally come in on the landscape from one of those outside areas. We do have a lot of our herds in this area of mule deer and elk that migrate off reservation and mingle in areas that are CWD positive and had the potential to have brought it back to the reservation. Again, with this incident, we have had a couple of other exposures on the reservation where there are likely prions on the in 2 different areas in that Missions Wildlife Management Unit due to how the carcass was handled post-harvest. And so that is another concern and one of the reasons that we administratively are going to be leaving the head and the spinal columns in Hog Heaven urban area when we harvest them. And we would request or suggest that hunters do the same, again, to prevent that risk of spread. And then also no carcass dumping is really important because that's how we get these additional exposures in the environment. And again, once that is there, it's there for at least 16 years. So just to follow through what we did once we had that detection, we, following the plan, designated an immediate 10-mile radius called the initial response area. And based on our wildlife management units that we already follow and manage big game by, we created a CWD wildlife management zone. Using population counts as well as our helicopter flight to kind of run and ground truth some of that data, we were able to calculate what our prevalence sample size needed to be in order to determine how prevalent it is out on the landscape. Then we also followed that plan internally to come out with our press release and have that increase the awareness to the public on that detection. And so kind of a real representation of what prevalence is. So we have a herd of animals. Let's say this is the Hog Heaven mule deer population. And right now we have 1 sample. Again, we haven't gotten many samples from the urban or hog heaven area total. So we don't have a lot of, ideally you would like 100 to 200 samples in each area to be able to say, okay, we do or do not have it in that spot. We don't have that many samples in, or in the hog heaven urban area. So right now we have one detection. So we know that at least one animal in that herd has chronic wasting disease. What we don't know is whether we have low prevalence of CWD in that herd, meaning there's just a couple of animals with it, or do we have a high prevalence and is there a lot of animals in that herd that have CWD? We don't know which situation we're at. And so if we have a tribal member that harvests the deer in that population, if we have a low prevalence, so when we talk about long-term management, we have to keep prevalence of CWD below 5%. When it gets above that, you start seeing 30 to 40% just die-offs every year from the disease. So your population is going to tank fast and it's going to spread fast. So you have to keep prevalence of CWD on the landscape below 5% if you want to like not see large increases and spread. And then, because right now it has risk to spread to the Mill Creek area. That could bring it down to Ferry Basin. It could wipe out our Ferry Basin population if we don't restrict the exposure to where it is currently. Also, we have no idea where it's distributed on the landscape. We have one positive sample. Is it just that one spot, or is it also down in Jetty, or is it over in Mill Creek? We don't know because we don't have any other samples that can tell us where it is on the landscape or how much of it is out there. So if we have a hunter in a low prevalence situation, let's say we only have 5% prevalence, that means every time a hunter harvests an animal, there's a 95% chance that it does not have CWD. So relatively safe to continue harvesting out of that population because there's a high chance if you harvest an animal, it does not have CWD. That's the situation that we want, and that's the long-term management goal for this area. What happens if you have a high prevalence of CWD in an area? You can take that same harvested deer, but now you only have, let's say that it has CWD just because there happens to be more out on the landscape. You have a lot higher chance of that animal having CWD that you've harvested. And so that chance that it doesn't have CWD goes down drastically as your prevalence increases. So prevalence really matters, and how we handle prevalence and how we manage prevalence matters. It can impact human safety just in harvesting animals and consuming them with CWD. Again, I think I mentioned this last time, but I'll just note from the new folks in the room that when you cook or boil or heat meat with CWD, you increase the number of prions in that meat that you're consuming. So it is recommended by CDC and WHO, the World Health Organization, not to consume that meat because, again, you're consuming a really high rate of those prions after you cook your meat. And then you also can affect herd health. Like I said, if that prevalence or number of animals that are sick in the herd starts to increase, there are some areas in Wyoming that lose 20 to 30% of their herd every year due to just die-offs of animals that are sick. It can spread quickly and cause a lot of die-offs if it's not managed. And then again, that rate of CWD spread, how quickly it spreads to surrounding herds is impacted by how we handle and deal with prevalence. And then I was going to go into, Whisper already talked about this, what our proposed hunt is. Again, I think I had kind of what our objectives are, and she went over those, and then kind of the plan itself. And then just to kind of go over again what our future is for management in that area is to continue to monitor surveillance and all across the rest of the reservation, especially in those areas where we know that we have CWD prion exposure to the landscape. Mandatory sampling of any species harvested from this area so that if it's in whitetail deer and if it's in elk, we know as early as possible. There's a possibility that through our surveillance program following this plan, we have detected it in an early stage, so it may be at really low prevalence, but we don't know that until we collect our samples to determine and calculate what our prevalence is. And then again, we'll continue to manage that mule deer population in that hog heaven urban area to try to maintain prevalence and keep it below 5% using hunters and their harvest and sampling to help us kind of continue to keep an eye on what the prevalence is in that area. Yep.
Are we putting tracking devices on these herds or on some of the deer?
No.
Any reason why?
It's very costly, and you know, there's a lot of research that goes into how it is spread within a herd, particularly does and really close social groups within doe herds can kind of give some insights into how it's going to spread, but really it's the males that visit the different doe herds that can carry it from one group to another.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Ms.
Another thing that we've been talking about with the state of Montana, we don't have funding for big game management specifically or these special projects, but we have been talking about trying to get a grant to be able to collar animals again. The last time we did, we collared elk in the Ferry Basin area, and we're surprised, along with the state, to learn that those are not resident elk. They actually winter range here and then move all the way up toward Lost Trail and back down to the reservation. So there's a lot of migratory animals, herd animals in this area and between the state and non.
Right there.
And we don't know what the impact is to humans, correct?
Correct. Prions are kind of a weird thing. They're like a calcium encrusted thing that gets in your body and stays in your body. There's no detection yet of a cross between humans and ungulates, but when there becomes that cross, we don't want to be patient zero, for one. Handling the meat, handling the brainstem, handling blood, all of that is infectious material.
Okay, I went to a meeting years ago about bird flu, swine flu, all of those things that could potentially take out populations of humans. And so, you know, I think we need to take this very serious when it comes to, you know, our tribal public, well, all public for that matter. But yeah, I think we need to take the precautions, and I appreciate the management plan that you have thought out, and that's what we hire you for, is to make sure that our populations are going to be strong into the future. But the thing is that we just don't know where this is going to take us. We may not have any herds left, even bison. So I think we need to listen to what the others have to say. But of course, I'm more towards the management, because I just think we need to do something to see where we're at in the whole process. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. And I would just add, the way that chronic wasting disease presents itself in elk is very similar to mad cow disease. And so if it were to spread to humans, it may be similar to how that spreads into humans. So it is a pretty serious potential there.
That's the presentation. We'll take questions or discussion from the crowd. Go ahead, Vernon.
You mind if I go real quick?
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
Vernon, if you mind. Sorry. So I've been bouncing, I really have. Before we get into further discussion, I've been bouncing back and forth on this quite a bit in my own head. You know, exactly your question, Danielle, is can we remove it? If by doing that, it can't be removed. You know, and you got to look at it both ways, the management side and the tribal ethics side, the tribal way of life. And looking at it that way, is this something we should be doing as a tribal people for, you know, a mass taking? Has never been our way. We only take what we need. And I keep bouncing back and forth. Is this a take for what we need, or is this a take for management? And it's kind of both when you look at it now, how we how we manage our resources, how we live with our resources, is that in order for us to protect and manage our resources correctly, there is a need for taken. 126 sounds like a big number. It is a big number. 126 out of 400 and something, which is like a quarter of the herd population. How does that change population dynamics? I'm not sure. How does that change the survivability of that species there? I'm not sure. But then I look at it in both ways of, if we manage, look at it as go back to COVID days, okay? We have to do something in order to reduce the spread of a disease, just like we did during COVID. You know, reducing the population, reducing the risk of that migration out of there, reducing the, and isolating that community of deer to itself in order for it not to affect other communities of deer. We've done this with our own humankind recently, and it's kind of the same management scheme looking at this for wildlife. You know, and what we're asking, or what they're asking, is an extension of the tribal hunt, and asking tribal hunters to focus in that area. Take what you need or aid in the taking for the testing. And where I keep, when we first talked about this, where I really sat was, I don't want to take anything we're going to waste. And I wanted to make sure we could save that meat, store that meat, use that meat. If it is contaminated and we're not advised to consume it, then let's dispose of it in order to help the herd, help our population, help the rest of the reservation wildlife. But we need to make sure that if we do this, we need to not, I believe they have it set up in a way to not waste anything. You either use food sovereignty, food banks, tribal members, departments that may need it, anything. We have the storage facility, the testing facility, and the processing facility that said they would aid us in cutting this meat and storing it and being able to use it. So as much as I think in my what we all know as Indian people is we don't want to take more than we need. I think there's a need to focus on taking mule deer in this area in order for us to understand the level of disease within those animals in that area in order for us to manage and protect the rest of the wildlife we have on our reservation.
Thank you, Tony. Go ahead, Vernon.
Yeah, I appreciate all of that, and I agree with a lot of what Tony just said. You know, from a cultural standpoint, his first statement is right on. You can call it a hunt if you want to go out and slaughter 100+ deer, you know. You can call it a hunt, but I call it a slaughter because we don't take more than you need at the time. You just don't do it. From a cultural standpoint, you just don't do it, you know. And if there was a valid explanation that this would eliminate it, then that would be a strong argument. But there is no evidence that this will, they can say that it'll slow it down. There's no evidence of that. It has spread and it continues to spread. The only long-term true response that we have is requiring from now going forward, and not just in Hog Heaven and Jetty and Irvin, but everywhere. Every one of our hunters should be testing their game every time they get it. But to go out and slaughter 100+ in the hopes that we might have an effect on it overall, From the Kasanka cultural standpoint, you just don't do that. And so there really isn't strong proof that these measures will actually affect it. Now, what's before you then is Western science approach of doing it. Is that what we want to supersede our cultural values for? Or is the cultural values that we say are important to us as a tribe, does that override it? And it's not even overriding it. The compromise between the two is requiring everybody going forward that takes game to have it tested. That way, it's culturally appropriate, and it also responds to the needs. To treat this as an emergency, and let's go out and do a Western approach of slaughtering 100+ animals, that's not consistent with the Kasanka cultural values. So that's the part that I wanted to have input. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vernon. Any other folks that want to come on up, Leonard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council, administrations that doing this presentation. There were good points made by all parties involved here. One of the things about the chronic wasting disease is that there's flaws in thinking we can control it. I went on the website of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks last night, and they're even saying there's no way you can eradicate it. It's here. And the lady here brought up that, you know, there could be devastating to herds. Well, that's what diseases do to herds when they overpopulate. That's what happens when you bring the wolf back. They get rid of the diseased animals and protect the humans. For us to think we can manage our wildlife is asinine to begin with. I think we take our fair share that we've learned. I've talked to some of the hunters up north. They don't feel comfortable going out and killing more than they're used to killing. Who's to say we're going to kill the right 126 deer or 100 deer out there of the 400? What if everything we killed, they're all come back negative? But the ones we didn't kill are the ones that are infected. So it's a guessing game. Going out and doing something that's not culturally appropriate is not the answer to eradicate this disease that's come in. We knew it was coming in, and it was just a matter of time. You go out and do this hunt right now, as you guys are trying to call it a hunt, is you shoot the animal. What are they going to do with the guts and stuff if that animal is contagious? The other thing you look at with this disease is when is the incubation period of a diseased animal? The second it gets it, or does it incubate in the animal for a certain period of time? Fish, Wildlife, and Parks says 3 to 6 months before you can detect it. So are they contagious prior to that 3 to 6 months? The other comment I'd like to make is it was made there was only one station to get rid of our diseased animals. Well, right there's a problem now. So it's not well protected. It's spread by animals, it's spread by birds. Fish, Wildlife, and Parks also talks about the crow as one of the ones that spreads this disease also. It goes through their system and it's not affected them, and they deposit their feces on the ground. Okay, how long is it in the ground before it becomes contagious to the next deer or elk or moose? There's a lot of unknowns that still needs to be examined. If we want to approach this, in my own common sense, is to have our stations put where the diseased animal was found, which was in the hog heaven area. It should be, you should be set up in Elmo and Nirata up there. So you know the hunters are going in and coming out. If they got one, you know, they say, well, wash your hands, wear gloves when you do. What about the blood? The blood that's going to be spilt on the ground. Is that instantly contagious to the next animal that comes and smells it, steps on it, or whatever? So killing 100 animals is not going to eradicate anything because you're actually helping the spread of it if you're going to kill 100 animals. Now you've got 100 animals killed throughout a 10-mile area that's contaminated because of the blood, because of the waste you leave, and the birds take it and they spread it some more. So are we eradicating it, or are we actually spreading it more? I understand the job that these people do here in front of me. I totally get it. But there's better ways of, you got to look at the whole picture and stand back and look at it really well. And I mentioned it at our elders meeting that was a knee-jerk reaction to do something like this. That most hunters that grew up on the cultural side and religious side of whatever tribe we're from don't think it's a good idea because we were taught not to take more than we need. And saying that we need to kill 100 to protect ourselves is just ludicrous, to say the least. We're not protecting ourselves, and we're lying to ourselves if we think we can protect the wildlife. Wildlife's out there being protected by wildlife. And that's the mountain lion, it's the coyotes, it's the wolves, it's the birds that even spread it. So I think this council needs to sit back, and this department needs to sit back and think harder on it. When the state of Montana says there's no way you can get rid of it, and they're doing management hunts and stuff, even in their areas up in Libby area, in the districts of 100, 102, 103, you know, are they really eradicating it when they do a special hunt? And how many of them were contaminated? Didn't stop it because they just helped spread it by leaving deer parts out there. So, you know, it's something you got to ponder a little longer than saying we know it was going to come and now it's here, so we want to go out and slaughter 100 deer, and that's going to take care of it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council, and administration.
Thank you, Leonard. Carol? And then,
Let me understand one thing. Your management plan is not, and you know this, it's not to eradicate it, it's to find out the impacts of eating, whatever the case may be. That's my understanding of what you're trying to do. Is that correct?
That's correct, Carol. So once it's in the landscape, it cannot be eradicated. Once it's in a herd, rather, and then it stays in the soil up to 16 years. Once it has been exposed or dropped there, you know, the best way to contain the spread when you harvest an animal is to leave everything on the site, because that soil is already contaminated with urine and drool and any sort of bodily fluid. And if that animal were to be harvested or die in any other means, as it decomposes, all of those prions get into the soil. So no matter where that animal dies, it's going to release those prions into the soil. And then there's one other thought that I had in responding.
My thing.
Oh yeah.
My thing is basically human consumption, and I feel bad I have to say this. I don't know if I can eat it. I mean, I know people out here that's their survival is eating wild meat. But right now I don't know if I can do that until I know what the impact to my child or my grandchildren will be. And I think that's what you're trying to do here, is have a better understanding of the impact to our human population. I mean, like Leonard said, the animals are going to take care of the animals. And I talked to you a long time ago, Carrie, about this chronic wasting and all of these animals. There's probably more that get killed on the highway. I mean, within 6 months. I've hit 3 of them myself. So anyway, I just think we need to do something, but I also think what these guys are proposing can be done also. I think we need to do both. I think we need to take the animals, but I also think we need to make it mandatory that no, whether you're going to a slaughterhouse or driving by the place in Ronan, I think they all need to be checked, and it needs to be something that you get fined if you don't stop and have your animal checked. That's serious, because I don't think otherwise we're gonna do anything. People are gonna just drive by and not care, but I care about my elders and my human consumption of it that could make somebody sick, or we don't know. Maybe it won't. Hopefully not.
Go ahead, Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's important to reiterate that out of these 121 animals that we are going to utilize Montana Department of Transportation roadkill numbers as well, going through next hunting season. So this is going to be over a period of about, 10 months. This is not something that's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. And everybody can give you an opinion of what to call it. We have 8,000 tribal members. Slaughter or a hunt, or just trying to figure out what the prevalence of chronic wasting disease is in these 2 management units. Now, when this hit the airwaves, I know a lot of people. I've lived in Ronan my entire life, and I have a lot of friends, tribal members and non-members, and the tribal members called me. I had my phone ringing off the hook, and they're asking me, what are we going to do? What are we going to do about chronic wasting disease? They were upset. They were upset that it's here. A lot of my tribal member friends from all 3 tribes were concerned. They were upset. They don't want it here. And I said, well, it's here. It's a matter of how do we prevent it from spreading to other parts of the reservation? How do we stop it, from spreading? Because as Carrie said, we don't know the prevalence of where it's at today. And that's what we're asking to do as, the Natural Resources Department, which you charge us to help manage your resources, the membership's resources, to prevent it, to see what's happening with chronic wasting disease. Because we won't know. Even if you mandatory tell the membership to get them tested, I think they will automatically. But we also know a lot of our membership do not hunt anymore. You saw the numbers. The numbers are dwindling for our hunters. And we got incentivized to get people out to hunt and to bring us their heads. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And it just, sometimes it's difficult. So our membership is aware. Our hunting membership is aware. And then when you look at just what Carol said, the part where I would like to know if my deer is impacted by chronic wasting disease before I consume it. Heck yeah. We're planning to help with that. And the deer that we get over the next 9 months, we're not going to waste a thing. We're working with food sovereignty. If they're not impacted by the disease, we are going to utilize that deer to the fullest extent that we can. So we're not taking this lightly. This is not something we want to do, but it's something that we feel is necessary. And utilizing the Western science in which we were trained to do, and also being culturally aware, because we are tribal members as well. This is not something we want to do, but it's something we feel we have to do.
Tony?
I think, I have a question written down here, and I think Rich was hitting on it at the very beginning of his talk was, I think there's a misunderstanding of looking at this plan and outlining it. They're asking for an extension of the 2-week hunting period for tribal members to extend their opportunity and focus on hunting within that area. The taking of 126 animals isn't expected to be taken within that 2-week hunting period. The expectation of taking that 126 animals are throughout the next year, throughout this next, I can't remember what date you guys were referring to. Is it within calendar 2025? So throughout this next year, we want to focus on administrative take. We want to focus on, they want to focus on hunters focusing into that area for hunting of 126 animals throughout this next calendar year. So I don't know if I just wanted to make sure everyone's clear on that the 2-week extension for the hunting for tribal members isn't the expectation that 126 deer will be taken during that time period.
Plus the roadkill that we're gonna get in that area, that we know is gonna happen.
Well, the process that you're entering upon here is to know prevalence. And won't just regular hunting give you that prevalence if everything's tested?
We don't have enough hunters submitting samples to be able to get that number, especially mule deer and especially in that area.
I understand that, but at the same time, if everything's tested, you're gaining knowledge the whole time, right? Say you do your hunt and you do realize a prevalence of 40% in that area. Then what do you do?
Then you would decrease the population to where prevalence was below 5%. Really, the only way to contain CWD and prevent it from spreading is to have low prevalence, which means lower population numbers. And then just to kind of clarify, build on what Tony was saying, the intent of the hunt is really to be a means to help us. One, the big thing is to communicate with our hunters, because we have not had good communication with our hunters. We haven't had a lot of interest or submitting of CWD sampling. There's really low education about chronic wasting disease in our tribal membership hunters. So this is really, the hunt is a push to educate hunters to help us achieve that sample size, which again, the sample size isn't part of the hunt or the strategy. It comes straight out of the plan. So that number is already determined, but what this plan does is it helps us achieve that sample that we need in a more timely manner. Generally, if you, not every detection of CWD in a new area is going to warrant a hunt. But we're pushing it with this one because it's our first detection. Our hunters don't really know about CWD or sampling. And so this 2-week period, again, is to extend that doe season to really focus that hunting in that area, help us achieve those sample size, along with we're going to continue our roadkill sampling, our administrative hunting over, the next year. Again, if we need to go into next hunting season, hopefully we'd have that determination or that sample size by the end, of December of this year. But again, the earlier we have and know what that prevalence is, the earlier we hit that sample size, the earlier we know what the situation is out there. And I was going on one other thought, but it disappeared. So I know that Whisper's got to say something because she's got to get to Helena, so I'll let her go too.
Mr. Chairman, I do have to leave because I am traveling to Helena to testify against House Bill 216. I believe Len's going to be heading over there too. Part of our work pre-CWD detection was getting the chronic wasting disease surveillance emergency response plan written, vetted through everybody, vetted through the public, through our TAPO process, and approved by tribal council. Everything that we're talking about is in the plan. The fact that we're going to testify and tell the state that we do not want to open up the Flathead Reservation to non-member fee owners hunting on their property. They're using chronic wasting disease as a reason to be able to get that approval. If we don't follow our plan that we all approved and say we're not going to do prevalence hunting, then we can't say that we're following our plan and use that as ammunition against those people in this hearing. If we don't use it, then we don't have it. We've vetted this plan. We've talked to everybody that would listen. But because chronic wasting disease hadn't been detected, people were not that interested in listening. We've been doing outreach, we've been doing public meetings, we've been trying to get people engaged, and only now are people going to probably listen because it's actually been detected. I am going to have to excuse myself and I apologize.
Thank you, Whisper. Go ahead, Mark.
I have just two things. One, Carol's point about making it mandatory. That's gonna, and Vernon brought it up to you, make it just mandatory throughout the entire reservation. If it is changing the org plan and getting more people on there to staff these areas, you have check stations set up. You have them where it's mandatory tag system where they get tags and make sure it gets checked in. No meat processor can accept them without a tag. If they do, game wards are called, and then you can do the citation to them through that aspect. Then we could be getting the numbers we need as hunters. Yes, there is a lack of check stations. There is a lack of the tribal membership who do hunt, and there are a lot more than what people do believe. They just don't go to the check stations because it's not mandatory. There's no checks or balances on it. The incentives that are out there right now to bring your animals in is a bounty in my mind. Our tribal membership should step up, and council should step up and just demand that we get a mandatory check station. If they don't use the check station, they get a citation. If found guilty, they lose their hunting rights for a year. It is going to affect people hard, but this is something we want to contain in smaller areas and smaller populations. But as an incentive, though, we're going to the House Bill 216 today. Whisper just said she's going down to testify. They're going to try to use CWD against the tribes and try to open it up to the reservation. But how does it look if we're going to be saying that we have to bribe our own hunters to go out? Doesn't that feed their case of that we don't have the hunters out there reducing our populations? So it's a double-edged sword. We keep incentivizing this. Yes, that is why it got detected. The individual who stopped in to drop it off only did to get his name in the drawing. It wasn't because it was as ethical or anything like that for him. He did it for that reason. Glad he did. Now we know it's here. The management on it like they want, it is a testing sample. We don't know exactly if there's only 450 animals up there. There could be more. Those are the ones they got to count in the areas. The testing sample is to get a baseline for it. If it is done over a longer period, great, but if it's mandatory, then it could be done. But it's here. Now it is trying to maintain it in a responsible way through the management practices. But I think mandatory hunting and check stations and regulations on it would have to be in effect. And then the incentivized hunts would go away and you could just get them to do it.
Go ahead, Vernon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and Council. To me, listening to the recent comments was just in support of requiring folks to do it. And it doesn't even really have to be mandatory. Carol made the perfect point. If you know and you educate our tribal public here, especially those of us who, you know, I buy beef probably once a month, if even that, you know. Educating the tribal membership on chronic wasting disease seems to be really the way to go. I mean, if they haven't, if the interest wasn't there for chronic wasting disease, it should be now. You know, the Carol made the perfect point. You know, and you don't have to incentivize. I mean, the incentive is I'm not going to feed my family some contaminated meat, and I'm not going to eat it. So you can bet that every bit of game that I get is going to be tested. You know, we know it's here. All right, we're not, and the purpose we realize the purpose isn't to eradicate. But the purpose, you know, and they said it themselves. You can't eradicate it. You know, all right, then what do we do with it? You know, how we do it is that we make sure that all the game is tested, because there are many people who subsistence hunt yet. And so so that's the way that we manage it, is just by requiring everyone to get tested, any of the game that they take. And like I said, not just in that area, but reservation wide. And even off the reservation, if they hunt off the reservation. You know, I mean, as just a safety measure for my own family, if I go up the Yak and get a moose, you can bet it's going to get tested. You know, or if I go off the res and get an elk somewhere, you can bet, you know, it's going to be tested. You know, but that's the solution. Doing you know, a special hunt isn't really necessary. Just requiring that you know, we know it's here. Let's just require that everybody test their game. And the issue of the House bill later today is a completely separate issue. They, you know, if somebody wants to bring up chronic wasting disease in that argument, it's a pretty weak argument. It has no relevance to it. Those are two completely separate issues. So, thank you, and you know, we look forward to your decisions. Thanks.
Thank you, Vernon. Go ahead, Rich.
All good points, but we still wouldn't know the prevalence of what Vernon just said. And that House bill, I can guarantee you they're talking about it. They're talking about chronic wasting disease. It's my job to know what's going on with that House bill. So yeah, it's a relevant issue. Vernon may be right that it's moot, but they're going to use it, and they will. So my thing is that, you know, just requiring people to get their meat tested, it's a great thing, reservation wide and off reservation, but it still won't give us the prevalence of this or these two management units in Hog Heaven and Irvin, and that's what we want to focus on, because that's where we found the contaminated mule deer buck, you know, and that's what we want to focus on today. And it's going to take us the rest of this calendar year to get the amount of samples that we need. If we get there, you know, there's no guarantees, but I think we can, if you allow this special hunt to occur. So I think that's all I'm going to say for today. I think you guys have heard enough from us. So
Thank you, Rich.
Council, hey, my name is Patrick Left Hand, Junior. Like Leonard was saying, there's some of us traditional hunters and spiritual hunters and stuff up north. I just want to ask these guys up here a little bit, managers here. What part of spirituality do you understand? about hunting in the native way? Okay, now, what's the first thing you do before you go hunting? Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna tell you right now. So, me and my creator, I'm gonna tell you right now. I was taught how to fix these things. When we go out and we hunt, we bring that meat back to our house, to our families. I have 5 sisters. All their men are non-members and they don't hunt. I provide for them. I have a spiritual way of doing it. And when you do that spiritual way, the God Almighty, the Pushkanapika, and all them, they look down upon you and they medicine up your meals. Why? Because that's how we pray. We pray for everything we eat to make our body healthy. The wolf, Gakin, Skincoots, those guys go over and they're the managers of the mountains. I'm in the mountains 99% of the time, and that 1% is a wasted day of my life. So by going up and doing your big hunt and 126 deer, 140 deer, whatever it is, that goes against my spiritual, my cultural way of life and the way I was raised. When I bring meat to my house, I take care of it myself. I spiritually take care of it. I cut it up and I do it and I bring it out to my family. So now the way you're saying is if I go and I have to give my stuff to you guys, your head and all that, what am I going to do how am I going to tan my hides? There's a key component to that from that deer, and it's called the brain. So by me having to leave that there with you guys, and I don't get it, I can only cut my horns off, or I can only go over there and cut the ears off. You're telling me I can't use my resources in my spiritual and cultural way, so I can provide buckskin and everything for my dances, for our spiritual stuff. I don't go buy buckskin. We make our own. We use everything in our animals. Like Leonard said, you got that deer up there, you already contaminated that. You talked about the pee being on there. How many times do they pee and poop a day out there? Sometimes Western science is not the way to go about it. It's the Indian way of life. Because when we start tying our hands with the non-Indian way of life, that takes away from our sovereignty. Remember, that's the exclusive right of taking animals, gathering fish. By putting this on right there, by incentivizing this stuff, that's saying that you're paying us for it. Guess what? That undermines my spiritual and my cultural way of life. I don't look at things in the Suyapi way, because the Suyapi way has never really benefited my way. Yeah, I go to work and I have a job. Yeah, I have a car. Yeah, I have a house. But you know what? It doesn't incentivize my traditional and spiritual way of life. My grandma Adeline Matthias told me that when we shoot things, they're a spirit that comes to your house to help you. Not every animal is going to come to your house. And I can tell you that for a fact because I've been chasing wolves since September, and guess what? Not one of them has come to my house. But when the animal comes there, it helps you out. And yes, chronic wasting disease, yeah, it can affect the whole herd. Just like a wolf can. It's like a human can. But by sampling and going out there in Elmo and doing all that stuff, the way I look at it on that map, it's only in Kootenai territory. Like Mark said, why don't we do it reservation-wide? And if it's mandatory, guess what? That goes against our exclusive right. Because you're gonna take those animals from me. What if you have to sit there and let my deer hang for 3 weeks and I have to have it done in a spiritual way of life? You're gonna tie my hands in a spiritual way of life? For Western science. I'm just bringing some stuff up, bro. I have nothing against you guys. All I gotta say is maybe in the whole year, maybe you guys should go out there and take 10 deer out somewhere. But also let the tribal members that work in your office do it. Because those animals are spiritual. You understand? I know you understand what I'm saying, bro. I have that respect for you. I know you're doing your best to try to maintain all this stuff, but like everybody else, can they control cancer? Not really. That's like chronic wasting disease. So have an open mind on our Tunacha, Ksanka, Ksmuknik people's way of life, our cultural way of life. We don't go slaughter things, we take what we use. Because we smudge, we doctor our stuff. Maybe we need to get that education out to the public. That they need to start doing their cultural ways and things won't come into their house like that.
Thank you, Pat. Anybody else? I guess one question I have is that you are asking for a hunt so you can take females. Is it a need to take the females?
There is an emphasis on the females again because they're the higher prevalence of CWD and tends to be in the does or the cow populations. And again, you can really get those kind of social familial groups, kind of, if you can focus that around the 2-mile radius of initial detection, then you can really start to, that's probably where the prevalence is going to be the most present in females. And then, so yeah, that's why, and again, when you're also talking about long-term population management, we do have a really high prevalence of does to bucks. So in order to kind of curb the population, you want to kind of control the number of does down a little bit so that there's, that buck-doe ratio, you want to drop that a bit so that the population doesn't continue to increase.
Then you also remarked that the prevalence north of us is in whitetail. And we're not checking our whitetail population.
That's correct. So the detection north of us is north of Kalispell. They haven't found anything outside of the immediate area of their transfer station or their garbage area up there. And it has been present in whitetail, but they have been sampling mule deer in that area, and they've only detected it in whitetail deer so far. But since our detection is in mule deer, we're focusing on that. Primarily because that's where we detected it. If we also detected it in a whitetail or a moose, or not a moose, an elk, they have their own level of what their sample size would need to be to detect prevalence in each species. So it's not prevalence over all species because it transmits differently between elk and deer. And so, right now we're sticking with mule deer because that's where we know it is. And if we do get a sample in another species, we will, be in trying to, using that calculation that's in the plan, trying to get a sample size for each species that is detected in.
Go ahead, Tony.
Just a question again, verify. So I was trying to look it up. What is the requested action today?
The requested action today is just the 2-week hunt, essentially, the allowing of the extension of the doe season for 2 weeks, and then the ability to put on that special hunt to have the mandatory sampling within that CWD zone, for the rest of the calendar year, and then that 2-week hunt are kind of the two big asks there.
So, looking at it, sorry, Carol, looking at it, it's not necessarily approving the plan as a full. What we could do is just approve an extension of the harvesting period for tribal members within Hog Heaven and Irvin, and make those additional, any additional animals harvested out of their mandatory for testing, and continue to develop a 2025 plan for monitoring and getting prevalence of CWD within those management areas.
Though in order to incentivize hunters to, and have like all of the refrigerated trailers and stuff available, we kind of need to know and have that kind of, not permit system, but the point system. If somebody submitted, gosh, let me see if I can find, I'll pull the plan back up. I mean, we kind of need to approve this whole plan to show whether or not, yeah. So we need to approve the hunt, which includes the hunter participation prize and incentive, that kind of stuff. It's all kind of one package, because if we just extend the 2 weeks, have the check stations, there's nothing really incentivizing the hunters to harvest. So that would be the concern with just extending the season and not having that kind of CWD focused hunt. We'd potentially not get as many animals out of there.
Carol and then Bing.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to see a full council here when we're making this decision. I mean, this is a big decision for us. If we could, Carrie, how soon, if we waited is it Thursday? We waited till Thursday?
I mean, there's a ton of planning we have to get done. So we kind of probably need it today in order to get stuff ready to implement it by Saturday.
It's your call, Mr. Chair.
Why has it got to be done by Saturday?
Because that's February 1st, and that's where that 2-week timeline that we have would start. Because we had either the 1st through the 15th, we talked about doing the 15th through the 31st, but then you start having antlers drop. So it's harder to differentiate between does and bucks, and then kind of just that gestation length. The fetuses get a little bit larger towards the end of February. So we're hoping to kind of avoid that by kind of having that first 2 initial weeks extended.
Go ahead, Bing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. By listening to the people, I don't know if you're going to have anybody hunt for you. And I hear what Leonard's saying about these, and I asked the same question the other day. Why do we have to start out with 125 deer? Why can't we just start out with maybe 40, 50 deer? That way there you won't have so many to get rid of. But, it's, I don't like it either. I'm like kicking this many deer, but I don't like that idea of having to possibly eat that chronic wasting disease. I usually hunt up on a south end. I don't really hardly go down towards where this area is you're talking about. But, the idea of hunting all these animals and killing all these animals is kind of against my spiritual tradition for killing these animals myself. But I take what I need every year. Unfortunately, this year I haven't got any. I've seen a lot of elk in Cali, but they've just been too far away for me to go shoot one and drag it back. But the idea of it just, all them animals, there's a lot of animals up there, and if this gets into them big herds, like you're saying it might, it's really gonna take a lot of them out of here. And there's some big herds. I've seen probably 500, 600, 700 head in one herd this year. And that many elk in one herd, if it gets in them, it's gonna really be devastating. But, offering a little prize to some of these people you might get them, but there's I think a lot of other people that's not gonna take it. I mean, we usually extend hunting, in December till end of December, and that's about it. We don't usually extend this cow or doe season any further than that, but it's just an idea of doing this, like Bernie was saying, Leonard was saying. I hate to hear that many animals being wasted. They say we don't waste it. We don't waste meat. We eat it. But the idea of just killing that many animals is not my way of doing things either. So I know you guys want to do this, and you mentioned a deal with the issue today in Helena. So it's probably going to be brought up. But we have our ways of doing things. We have our ways of protecting things here. Animals is one of them. And we don't do it the CIP way. And to kill a bunch like this is not our way at all. But, just the idea of hearing what's going on, what's going to happen and stuff is just devastating to me, because I don't know, like I say, I don't know if you're going to get hunters up there to do that for you. You might have a few, but other than that, I don't think you're going to have what you think you're going to need to do this. But anyway, I guess that's what I wanted to say about the whole thing.
Go ahead, Tony, and then Rich.
I just want to say, everything I've heard today, I agree with, in terms of cultural sensitivity and I struggled, and I haven't killed an animal in a long time because I haven't needed the meat, or I haven't felt the need to go out and hunt. It's been about 3 or 4 years, and I shot a deer, and I utilized that, and I heard what Oski said, and it resonated with me because I believed everything he said, because that's my way as well, and that's our tribal way. And so it was a struggle when I looked at this plan, but I still believe that's something we have to do in order to protect our herd, and knowing that we're not going to waste the meat. But again, no matter what occurs, those animals that we're going to take, we're going to do it in a culturally sensitive manner with tribal member employees that have the ability in their position description to be able to do that, while also using tribal member hunters over the next 10 months to get that number. So, we're very aware, because we are tribal members, and I've worked for my tribe 33 years, and hell yeah, I mean, I get it, and I know it, and I live it. So I just wanted to say, you know, what I heard today is what I hear every time. And this is a very controversial issue, and unfortunately, the timing sucks. The timing absolutely sucks because we're in Helena fighting again against that hunting bill that, frankly, is the fourth or fifth time it's come up in the last 10 years. You know, and we just get chronic wasting disease, the last couple of weeks. So the timing really sucks. You know, now it's here, and then we got our membership really aware that it's here. And they're asking us, what are we going to do about it? And so we're on the next step in the planning process, and it kind of came quickly, and that's why we have a lot of people here in front of you today. So we're just trying to move quickly to get ahead of it, so to speak. But that's all I wanted to say, Mr. Chair, and thank you, and thank the members that came in today to speak, and I appreciated it. And here's Tony.
Again, thanks, council. If it is if council wants to discuss this and wait until full council is on Thursday to make a decision, I'll support that, and it's your guys' wishes, and I'll support that as much as possible. If we want to, that would give me, and I would give the staff here time to discuss some of these issues and concerns and developments with our both elder committees at a joint elder committee meeting tomorrow also. And so it can really help solve some questions, develop a better plan with some traditional values intertwined within the plan. And that way, you guys will be at full strength on Thursday to hear an update and a kind of consensus or not of how to proceed forward.
Go ahead, Len.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the council, and thank you guys all for this information. I do realize that you guys are only doing your job, okay, by presenting this, and I want to thank Vernon and for coming in on behalf of the Culture Committee and reminding us who we are. Yes, this is a very, very tough issue. I've been thinking and praying about this since the day one, since the day that we found out that it was detected. In regards to House Bill 216, since I've been on council, every single legislative session, our treaty rights have been attacked. And they will continue to be attacked, and they will use issues like this against us. But we still need to continue to stand up against it. And you know, listening to both sides, I remember the spiritual ramifications that were taught to us when we were growing up about what happens when meat is wasted. It's wasted, but it's not. You know, I understand from the Western science perspective why we need to do this. I do. But on the other side, we're taking the life of an animal that has a spirit, that has helped our people, and it's just a really tough, controversial issue. And I commend both sides for both you guys doing your jobs. Now it's up to us to make that tough decision. And but yeah, I think I would agree that we wait until we get more of our council people involved in this discussion before we make that decision. Thank you.
Good, Carol.
I don't have a quorum for Thursday.
Okay.
Well, I was thinking we could do a conference call on Thursday after the elders meeting and make a decision at that time, but I think it'll be up to Carrie to get the information to the ones that aren't here and let them know that there will be a decision made. I think it needs to be made either way because we either need to do something or, move on. So I just, I don't think anybody's taking this lightly, and I really believe that. And it's a hard decision. Like Len said, pray about it because this is what we've done for thousands of years is taking our food, and it's hard.
There have been diseases in the past of all sorts that have decimated populations in different ways. And there will be more diseases of all sorts that decimate populations in lots of ways. So far, I can see the need for the extended hunt, for the extended time period, and for mandatory testing. You're going to have to do more than that to convince me about the other facets of your hunt. But I think those two things have been suggested by most of our folks here today. And I agree we can make the decision on Thursday. And thank you for the presentation. Thank you all for coming and providing discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Council.
Travel safe, Len.
Jen?
Can we go into executive for our walk-in?
Yeah, we will go out of regular into executive for a few more of our walk-ins.
Melinda is moved to 1. We are on Brian Hanson.
But it was yesterday, so that.
We have Brian first and then we'll go. And then when Brian, go ahead and go.
And we got Brian. Okay. Morning, Barry. Turn on your mic, please.
Thank you. I hope I'm not wasting your time or mine. I have a request for your approval to submit a grant to the BIA for $200,000 to provide additional support to our lake trout suppression program on Flathead Lake. And my first indication of potential problems was a support letter that I requested from the Flathead National Forest, which they had written and provided me but hadn't yet signed. And I got a communication today that they've been directed to not sign any documents from here forward until further notice. So I won't have that letter. And I don't know that this grant will even be put forward after today. But the application deadline is this Friday, so I would like to submit it anyway.
Motion by Carol, proceed with submitting the grant. Second by Jimmy. All in favor? We got James and Lynn.
I support.
Len supports. James. Guess James might be out of the room. It passes.
Thank you.
Can we go back in executive?
We'll go out of regular into executive. Morning, Lynn. So the process you want is to read that into the record and we'll have a motion on it?
So the recommendation that we're making today is for over a period of 90 days for the tribe to institute a hiring freeze for positions that have not closed as of today, January 28th, for any position that's closed January 28th or before, that they can continue with the hiring and onboarding process. For there to be a freeze on travel, except for emergency travel, consisting of law and order, social services, for legislative testimony, or for externally hosted travel. For employee evaluations to continue, but that there be a freeze on market or merit increases and a freeze on reclassification or promotions, and that these will be subject to retroactive pay associated with retro pay that will be contingent upon the availability of Treasury funds, that there be a freeze on any new capital expenditures or capital purchases, that things like include vehicles or large capital expenditures, and that there be a heightened level of scrutiny put on any new contracts, that they rise to the executive director and the financial management team, and that they be based on the contingent funding for those contracts, and for that to be in place for a period of 90 days.
Go ahead,
I
Carol.
have travel coming up, but it is reimbursed, but I don't think that that restriction should be put on council. I know we are planning to go back to DC. Other people's travel comes up. I mean, things come up that we need to go to. I don't think it should include council, tell you the truth.
I'm of the opinion that it still should be exigent, maybe not emergency travel, but very important travel.
Well, Mike, you're the one that signs off on it. I think you could.
Right. But the restriction needs to be listed, or my signing off on it doesn't matter. It's just a matter of if council makes it so. Other thoughts? Go ahead, Daniel.
Unfortunately, it's necessary at this time. We don't know what's gonna happen, and then 90 days, I think, is not too much to sacrifice while we figure it out so we can best take care of our people. So I would make the motion that we move forward with the 90-day freeze.
Motion by Danielle.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Second by James. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous here. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, we have Mark and Lance up last.
What's that? Take a break. Break for 10 minutes.
So this is a follow-up from last Tuesday's discussions that we had. The one issue we were looking at, the first one up on the agenda are the tariffs. We are bypassing that one. We're bypassing the next section of Stormy and Holly. We do have to go to the discussion on Jeannie Allard request. Not being able to move, Jen. There we go. Jeannie Allard request to allow a member from another tribe to purchase land and improvements. Stormy did find the resolution, one of the resolutions, not resolutions, sorry, the CFR orders, 151.8, travel consent for non-member acquisitions. On this one, this has been done twice in 2016 and one further in the past, it looked like, where these have been approved, where a tribal member from another tribe, an enrolled member from another tribe, has been able to purchase somebody's individual trust property or be in a gift deeded to them, even though it is in the home range of the Flathead Indian Reservation. Under that order, it just states that an individual Indian or tribe may acquire land in trust status on a reservation other than its own, only when the governing body of the tribe having jurisdiction over such reservation consents in writing to the acquisition, provided that such consent shall not be required if the individual Indian or the tribe already owns the undivided trust or restricted interest in the parcel of land to be acquired. So this is where it comes in, where the tribes got first consent to purchase. And if there is another CFR out there, we didn't get to find it. We haven't found it again. It's a one for where the tribes have that first right to go, they offer to purchase. And if there are no other individuals interested in the parcel, that stands until they have like a buy sell in place or anything for that purchase from another person. So that one was sent to us by Sherry Johns at the regional office last spring, I believe it was. Shane looked at it also, and so did Brian Mercier at the time, and was in touch with the individual landowner because the tribes did show interest in that parcel, and they didn't want to sell at the time, and they wanted to sell to the other individual, but the other individual, they didn't have a sound offer. They didn't have a buy sell or nothing in it. It was just verbal that they had another offer, and they didn't have any binding documents to prove there was another offer on it. So that one was halted through the regional office and the solicitors backing the CFR citation. So that's where those consents come in. I know that you've asked for them in the past. Last Tuesday, you asked for them again. Stormy did find that one in her files. George, I believe, has the other one from Shane, from the solicitor. I'll get that tracked down and get that to you. So she was wanting to know if getting a written request from the tribe stating that she can sell to a member from another tribe. This one was appraised. She did try to work through tribal credit. She did have it listed personally for over 6 months. The tribes themselves had it. We were putting it out there too that it was for sale. It's 10-acre parcel. It didn't meet any doer or BPA or anything qualifying outside of acquisition budget. It's a modular home on 10 acres. The value of it was higher than credit allowed for lending, and the tribal members could not leverage up to what she reduced it down to. So she does have this individual, the individual that was stated last week by Vice Chairman McDonald. The individual is the FIP manager who is living there right now and is willing to buy at the appraised value. So that's who we would be requesting that permission for Janine at this time to get that in writing, get that approved.
And on approval, you'd still need a secretarial signature or superintendent signature, right?
And as long as we can get the paperwork going, and that does, they will still have to sign off on all the closings and everything else, but we can get all of that paperwork built up until that point. We just can't move forward until we get that approval.
Questions or thoughts? Be entertaining a motion to sell a parcel to a tribal member from another tribe? That's what the question is, right?
Correct.
Oh, Mr. Chair, are we in executive or open session?
We're in open session, James.
Okay, thank you. Abby was asking in the chat.
Oh. Is council interested in allowing a tribal member from another tribe to buy a trust parcel? I support it. Got a motion, Bing? Motion by Bing, allow the sale to another tribal member from a different tribe. Going once. Motion fails for lack of a second.
Okay. The next ones are resolutions on parcels that the tribes have shown interest, did everything for acquisition. It's just a resolution for acquisition that if you wanted to go through them, knowing that we can't, with the hold right now for the 90 days, this may have to come back in 90 days. So if you don't, we can just bypass these for right now because we can do the approvals, but then we just can't move forward with the paperwork.
Right. We ready to approve these? There's no reason not to, then you can do your paperwork.
Mr. Chair, question.
Go ahead, James.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do we need to do them individually, I'm assuming? So
I was anticipating individually, yeah.
I would make a motion on the first one.
Motion by James. Second by Jennifer. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. My list disappeared. So that was Casey Matt, 1/5 interest on allotment 3014A. So we'll go to Casey Matt, a 1/1 interest in track 4379.
Motion.
Motion by James. Second by Bing, all in favor?
Aye.
Yeah. Joseph Glover, 1/1 interest in allotment 1003-H.
Motion.
Motion by James. Second by Jennifer. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Joseph Glover, 1/1 interest in allotment 1003-J.
Motion.
Motion by James. Second by Bing. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Mary Bautista, 1/1 interest in allotment 1003-I.
Motion.
Motion by James. Second by Bing. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Yvonne Grenier, 6/35 interest in allotment 1399.
Motion.
Motion by James, second by Jennifer. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Eldina Davis, 1/2 interest in track 4215-C.
Motion.
Motion by James. Second by Jennifer. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Dana Hurt, 1/2 interest in track 4215-C.
Motion.
Motion by James. Second by Jennifer. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
The next item up was a rental rate adjustment to be more balanced in the department for all of our rental rates. We have them ranging from low to high for the same size house. We do have our emergency housing units. We do understand that those ones could be set lower for certain reasons. If it's health or medical or stuff like that. But if it was our property management ones for revenue, we have them fluctuating over the years, and they've never been adjusted and haven't had a set rate for everything. So we were looking at more of off of the fair market rate from each county where our properties are, where we rent the homes out, that
we do a 50% reduction from what the fair market is, which is a considerable amount still. It puts it at an affordable rate still for our tribal members to have a place of anywhere from $600 to $800 for rent instead of the $1,200 to $1,600 month rents out there. We still have that same effect. All of our rentals are taken up at this time. We do have some that are 800 and some down to 300. No rhyme or reason. We want to have a blanket across there. It's fair for everybody. Where one person, when they get a reduced rate like that, they don't want to shop around and look for another rental. They want to stay in that one long-term forever home. If they want to do that at the fair, the allocated fair market rate that council has approved. I did send a spreadsheet out last week with the packet. There is one in here. I just don't know what page it's on. It's towards the back of the there should be one in here for it. I did have it put back in. I am not seeing it. I can give you a breakdown of what it was. There is a big difference of our properties here. Fair market is 16,000. We currently only are receiving 5,200 in rentals. So we would just like to bring it to an allocated rate of 50% of what that fair market rate is off of the rental rates of each county throughout the state that have been checked through the Montana State Rental Association.
Thoughts, questions? One question I have is, I would imagine that if this was to move forward, that any rent that was less than what is being received would immediately go to that, but that any rent that is lower than what the allocated rate is that's moved in would be noticed over a reasonable amount of time, so that you're not just dropping a bomb on somebody.
Yeah, we were looking at that too, at the department aspect of it, with like the Koryaka Village, and that did give them like a 45-day notice of it. We were thinking like a 3-month notice saying, hey, you got, start planning on this. If you can't do this, you may have to look at elsewhere or what you need to do. But we were looking like at a 3-month time period that would be going into effect. It could be raising monthly from here on out, but we didn't want to drop a bombshell on somebody right off the bat. We wanted to let them know and start preparing for it. We looked at it back in December, and at that time, we were looking at it in November, and at that time in December, we were like, no, we're not doing that right before Christmas and New Year's. We're going to wait to bring it back into council. So that's why we're bringing it in now. So that would be adjusted if it's being paid over that county price range for that allocated rate. If we were already above that, we would reduce it down to that 50% allocated rate, but anything that's below it would get raised up to that 50%. That just gives operational budget for property management for any damages or anything for these individuals. It does give us that little bit better security that they're going to be taking care of the places better. It also does bring in that additional revenue into the tribes for the general fund.
Kind of wondering if this is a decision to have everybody here for. Jennifer?
No, I think it's a good idea. One of my friends rents a house in Polson, a 3-bedroom house that's very small for $1,800 a month. So rentals, I know in Missoula, If you go look in Missoula right now, a studio, not a one bedroom, a studio is minimum $1,000 a month. And a one bedroom is more. So the rates you guys are asking are, that's a good deal. That's still a good deal. Because if they went out on the open market, it's gonna be way more. Even in Polson. Yeah, even in Polson, everywhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, in Bozeman, a 2 bedroom, 1 bath apartment is $2,000 a month. So so what I think raising the rent is good. And I think it's still a good deal.
Got a motion? Motion by Jennifer to accept the allocated, system that land is, recommending.
Question, Mr. Chair.
Danielle, then James.
Thank you.
I would go ahead and second it, but these rates would be effective for 90 days. Is that correct?
Yeah, they wouldn't go into effect for about 90 days. What we're looking at is like beginning of February, we'd give them the notice. And then the end of May, June 1st, they'd go into effect.
Okay, yeah, I think this will create some fairness because they're all over the place. Some people are paying really high rates and some people are paying really low rates. So it makes it fair.
James.
No, Daniel asked my question. Thank you.
Yeah, how does that compare to a housing rate? Do you have any idea?
The housing rates right now, last I knew, they're going off of a fair market rate also, for bedroom size. It's what their rate is, but then they get their block grants and that cover a lot of the fluctuation.
Okay. And how about elders?
And elders, and these guys would have that same opportunity to go through housing to get those adjustments, just like our rental over at, the Halverson property, that they get supplemented so much money to offset that from income. But yeah, it's underneath the housing and that, the fair market rate, the last I heard with them is like, it was a couple years ago, the 4 bedroom home was going for 1,200. That was the fair market rate.
So actually Kate could have got an elder rate in that house that she's renting.
She should have, but I know she filled out all the paperwork with housing and they only supplemented her to that amount that they did.
That's right. Okay. Thank you.
Motion by Jennifer, second by Danielle. Approve the allocated rates. All in favor?
Aye.
2464 and Carol is opposed.
I would like to know more about the individuals in the homes.
Bing is also opposed. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 2 opposed. Bing and Carol.
Next item up was the tribal member target range out by Crow Reservoir. It was another idea to come up with a different parcel. Haven't got a chance to reach back with the individual that presented it and Law and Order to see if that site would work better for them. Just waiting on that, so I just wanted to follow up with you guys on that one, that it's gonna come back in. Big Arm General Store, we just needed council authority on it and approval to go ahead and move forward with the demo. It was talked about a few land committees ago, since we're continually showing that property, but the amount of work that it needs to take on to get anything usable there, for safety and just upgrades, it just doesn't work. So it looked like the best idea for it would be to clean the slate and have somebody build accordingly to what they would be wanting to rent the site for. So we would just need council approval to move ahead with the demo.
Any thoughts?
Mr. Chair.
James?
Sorry, I had the phone calling me. What was the demo for again, Mark? Sorry.
The Big Arm General Store, the last individual that went out there, I'm going to try to answer Danielle's side question on this too, was the last individual that went out there and was wanting to utilize it for a potential business and everything. They actually had one of their car contractor friends come in and take a look at it. And the cost to renovate it was over $100 and some thousand. And the demo cost is going to be way less. And that's just to get it to fit just the building. That wasn't the failed septic system and the new upgrade to the septic system that had to get put in. That was the HVAC, that was the cleaning and getting it all up to par. So it was going to be well over $200 and some thousand to do it. And that individual felt that if it was demoed, they could actually go get a similar structure built way less for what they need, modeled how they want it to be more functional for them, not how it was in the past.
Mr. Chair, do you need a motion to proceed with this?
That's what he's asking for, yeah.
I'd make that motion, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Motion by James. Go ahead, Bing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mark, does that water from that place up there on top, that store, does that go down across the highway and affect the Big Arm Casino down there? Because they had some water issues down there earlier. I think it was the summer. They had to go down and do a lot of work down there on that home or that casino down there where the water came in and stuff. I was just wondering if that was some of the water from the above there that went down in there to flood that.
High probability that the water that was across the highway from the home sites that are up there and all the residential, post office, and the old general store, there is a drainage right behind the general store that runs down across the highway to that area. They do have their pump station down there that pumps the excessive water out. The septic system there is compacted with the runoff from the clay base that has eroded into that septic system. So it is compacted already and closed off. That is actually full of clay base. They do have a bad draining system in there. Housing, I know, has looked at it in the past of trying to get a new sewer lagoon type or something up in there to try to alleviate that. It's a water treatment plant. So I do know they were looking at the ag lease behind there to try to do some kind of lagoon system to pump that up into it so it alleviates the drain field issues that are up there, because it doesn't absorb the water well enough when it's a very wet spring or wet summer. It just doesn't filtrate the water quickly enough. So that could be a contributor, as it was all coming down that drainage.
Motion by James to demolish the store. Jennifer. Second by Jennifer. All in favor?
Right.
Carol? Unanimous.
With the onslaught of the CITT DNRC grant that came out, there was one thing that got brought up by the DNRC individual that's working with us, Samantha, I believe her name is. said that if we had anything for the lands department, because we were doing all the applications for me to sign and everything to alleviate the burden of any of, and all applications coming in for the chairman or his signatories to sign. And we provided and looked at the one that's in place right now, 10161 resolution, where council designated certain tribal governmental officials to sign off in lieu of the chairman. And that was the director of tribal services, and that's when I red flagged me right then, is that needed to be updated in the first place, because that's no longer a title with the tribes. That is the natural resource director, Tony's position. So while updating that, the DNRC asked if they could have their own resolution for us to be able to go right directly with them, and they have correspondence directly with me and my staff, and if any documents needed to be signed, the approvals of awarding the money to us and so forth would be just signed off by me, instead of burdening the chairman or chairperson with potentially 84 of these applications coming in all at once or randomly through the next year, and taking up time when it could be done just in-house through a resolution. So we have two resolutions here that have been brought up to council, brought into council, that have went through legal review already. The Director of Tribal Resource Management, that's the title change on this one. This is the existing rewording of the USDA resolution. So we were looking at getting approval for this resolution and the DNRC one for all the CITT grant awards that we had applied for, the applications. And that's a second resolution on the next page.
Questions or thoughts? Are you anticipating these other signatures in the absence of the chairperson? Is that what it is?
Absence of myself or the chairperson, so anybody that is, if these documents need to be signed, that if I'm gone or you are gone, that Tony could sign off on it. These are the ones that the USDA recommended to have on here for the signatories, for the department to be able to sign on behalf of the chairperson.
There's a lot of the signing that we have happening. If I'm not available, another council person signs already.
The majority of the EQIP contracts that we get from USDA, APHIS contracts, or anything that are signed off, just for expedient, and it's just right in the office, and it's just a land signature that the tribal land owner is aware that they're signing off onto these programs. And we always update council on all EQIP contracts before we go into them. And we want to continue doing it and be able to get the signatures on these so we can just process payments or anything else that come into us. Go ahead, Carol.
EQIP is money that comes in because of stuff like CRP.
Yeah, grants that we apply for.
Okay, I really believe that needs to stay with the council, because I know in the past that the money ended up not coming in to the tribe, it went to the individual, but we found out later on, and it needs to come back into the tribe, right?
Yes and no, underneath the USDA.
Under a lease, under a tribal lease.
Yeah, underneath a lease in that, there are a couple different options on how they do them. If we apply for, the tribes themselves are applying for the EQIP grant, they are the ones who go and put all the infrastructure out of their pockets in and do their part of it. If it's going on a tribal lease, that's when we come in and we talk with council on it before they do it, that they can get an extension lease for the, extension of their lease for the amount of money that they're putting into it.
Okay, and so you're asking for you guys to sign both of those?
Yeah. Because we don't go and sign up for them, just us, because the money isn't coming out of a tribal pocket or a pool for a reimbursement. It's up to 80% of the cost is what they can fund. So there's still anywhere a 20% cost onto the tribes. Tribal members do it so they can get an extra extension on their lease to improve their ranching operation.
I think in the past, it was a tribal lease, but they were keeping the money, so it should have come back to the. I'm not sure under what situation that was, but.
I believe I remember that one where it was a cooperative agreement with the lessee. The lessee is the one who was receiving the payment, but not giving the 50% share to the tribes. We don't do that no more. It is strictly, if we do anything like that, it comes to the tribes. We reimburse that individual, so the money stays within the tribes. These also go with any of the grants. These would be signed off of forestry does for their USDA grants. Any of the stuff that NRD does that they use through USDA, we can sign off for them on that as the landowners.
That's an interesting thing that you just brought up, that USDA is involved in more than lands. And that if forestry is doing it with the lands director, department head to be the signer.
Yes, because the tribes are the ones who own the land still. And with this resolution, it gave the lands department head in the past the signatory authority to go ahead and get that, so that funding for regeneration or anything that they're doing, slashing or anything like that of a timber sale, that would be funded by USDA.
Yep.
And then that funding would come into them to supplement their project budget. And just as a landowner, the landowner themselves, you have an applicant and then you have a landowner on each application. So applicant has to fill it out, landowner has to agree with the management practice.
And then there would still be dollar amount limitations, right?
So like this one, with all USDA grants, when they come out, there's a point system for what environmental quality improvement project you're doing. If it's a water upgrade, if it's cross fencing, weed management, crop rotations, whatever. Each one will have a different value to it, money value. Some are very, very modest payments to the tribes for over a 5-year period.
I'm losing council people all over the place. So this resolution has been in place. It's just basically you are updating the Director of Tribal Resource Management.
Correct.
Entertain a motion. Motion by Bing. Second by Jimmy. All in favor? James?
3-mile markers usually.
Yes.
I got 6-4 and Jennifer out of the room. Next resolution is?
The next resolution is the similar governmental personnel executive agreement for signatory. This is with the DNRC itself. They requested it be filled out strictly with them and not just a signatory for the tribes. They wanted it directly with them. They at first wanted us to do 84 individual ones, and we thought that was just crazy. So a blanket one for all the DNRC, CITT ones would be better off. We are getting correspondence with the DNRC on a weekly basis for contact personnel. That is also the signatory. We didn't want to burden. Actually, at first, we did not realize that they wanted a resolution on it. Then they requested one after the fact. We'd already put all the applications in as me as the contact as the lands department head. And so it didn't burden council or chairperson or council members on a daily basis for any signatures or needs that they need. And you would have to come right to our office anyway and get the answer. So we did another one with the DNRC, same wording as the last time, except for the DNRC aspects of it. And it is the same signatory individuals as the last one too.
Questions, thoughts?
Mr. Chair, I'd make the motion to approve.
Motion by James to approve the resolution establishing the signatory authority for DNRC, especially CITT application. Second by Bing. All in favor?
I
We got 2-6-4. Jennifer out of the room.
Next item up for discussion was we brought up last time, we don't know why it was never done at the same time through the lands department. Being my financial business office manager had a discussion on it, and we still receive payments and we receive cash payments still. I don't want that in my office. I'd rather have any temptation, any burden or anything like that not to be in my office for a cash payment. So we would like it to be approved that tribal lands as of March 1st will only receive check or money orders if they're making a direct payment to the office. Otherwise, they can mail in their billing right directly to lockbox from home. It was created in the past, in the early mid-90s, the Tribal Lands Department started accepting payments instead of the tribal members sending that lease payment into the BIA lockbox themselves. They would take it and they have an account at Eagle Bank. They do deposits on a weekly basis on it. If a cash payment comes in, it's a day basis. They go and deposit it, so it takes time out of my office for them to run up and do it, especially if it's a cash payment. They do that, and then they send off that money from that as a lump sum check down to and pay off all of the leases and everything that go into lockbox. This way, if it was a no cash payment, it was just a direct check, we can mail those directly from the office for those payments. We just feel that with the day and age, other departments have done it where they're not accepting the cash payments anymore. It is check or money order. We would prefer having that same across the board with us, is that we just accept check or money order and no cash payment.
Mr. Chair,
Hey, James.
do you need action to do this?
I believe so.
I'd make a motion to accept or approve department recommendations on this. I think it makes absolute sense.
Motion by James, second by Danielle, for Lance to only accept checks or money orders, no cash. Payments that are tendered to them. All in favor? Unanimous.
The next item up was still the discussion over at the Black Bear Ranch about the shop and everything else. That's still tabled until the discussion tomorrow with the Kootenai elders and this, the discussion tomorrow morning with Preservation's group meeting. Rich and I both are to attend that at 9. So that's just going to be tabled. I still feel that's a great place for future, even for KCC to be able to utilize that area for longevity for hanging animals and creating a processing plant for themselves. That is just further discussion. Like I said last week during that discussion, when we brought it back in, was that is under management of the KCC. Any kind of changes to that management is not a lands matter. It is a council directive. So we just are going to table that one. And our last two, we are going to table and have to bring back in. They were going to be requesting potential sole source contracting for Ace Drilling, a tribal drilling outfit for the upcoming awards for the CITT. So we could get him doing the work, because it's 84 of these wells being drilled in the next 2 years for the funding. Since the hold is in place, where for contracting or anything, we'll just hold off because those are outside contracts. The other one was to bring in a home inspector, which will be tabled again and brought back in until the ban is lifted.
That's it?
That's it, other than one update. When I can't remember if I did update last week on this one. The CITT applications, we got 84 tribal parcels all within the primary zones. We had Rachel and some other staff compiled. She's the one who entered all the data in and got that information put up into the online database for them for applications. We submitted 84. There was a total of 147 applicants. We were 84 of them. And there's only 91 of those applicants were in the primary zone, which were 84 of ours. So I just wanted to say kudos to Rachel for stepping up and taking on a big task. And she's still working on them on a daily basis. Like I said, we just received more tasks from DNRC to upload a bunch more maps and stuff by Friday. So kudos to her for stepping up.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, James.
Thank you. Sorry, I got one quick one, I hope. Can it just be off the record, not necessarily an executive? Just a quick question. Mark and Lance.
Or if there was a decision last Tuesday over the extension. So nothing was done yet? Okay. Yeah. All we wanted to find out on.
I know we discussed tribal IDs yesterday, and I think we need to do, I guess I'll make a motion for the tribal IDs to be free for the next 90 days as well, while we see what's going on.
Mr. Chair.
James?
Yeah, I'm sorry if there's discussion going on. I'm not hearing it, but I would second the motion and add a little discussion to it. I was reading the news about the Navajo Nation that the ICE were picking up members of their tribe down there and picking them up, and they didn't have IDs, so they were getting swept up into the ICE sweep up. So I definitely think we should, if our tribal members need IDs, they should be able to get them.
Thanks, James. I'm sorry I had my mic off. Jimmy did second that, so it's motion by Danielle, second by Jimmy. All in favor?
Hey,
Unanimous? Thank you, Danielle. Anything else? Che Hoy.